Next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Finance. Minister Dickinson, would you like to present your statement at this time?
Please, you, Mr. Speaker.
Go right ahead.
Speaker, the purpose of this statement is to provide an update on the progress being made to enhance the conduct framework for the financial services sector in Bermuda. The enhanced framework is intended to further develop existing conduct requirements to create fair outcomes for customers as they engage with the banking sector. Mr. Speaker, the government takes the view that the regulatory framework for financial institutions should be enhanced to provide additional requirements regarding the conduct of financial institutions and the protections of customers. The government also takes the view that the authority, in particular, should adopt clear and consistent regulatory processes to achieve this objective. Mr. Speaker, against this backdrop, and in order to further enhance the financial services sector framework, the House is advised that the authority does not have a specific power to enforce protection of customers using financial services offered by financial institutions. Although certain acts make explicit note of the authority's role in protecting clients and potential clients of registrants, the relevant provisions of the Banks and Deposit Companies Act, as well as other relevant acts, are primarily concerned with preventing breaches of law rather than focusing on fair outcomes for customers specifically. Mr. Speaker, it is proposed to amend the Banks and Deposit Companies Act of 1999 to provide a power for the Bermuda Monetary Authority to issue codes of conduct in relation to the manner in which an institution conducts deposit-taking business. It is also proposed that appropriate changes will subsequently be made to the customer-facing component of the regime, which will fall under the auspices of the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thus, matters relating to customer complaints will be overseen by the Department of Consumer Affairs. Discussions between the authority and the department have commenced and will continue to be progressed to ensure that the overall regime achieves the objectives of providing appropriate protections to the customer. As part of this work, there will also be amendments made to the regulatory and other legislation to allow for appropriate sharing of information. Mr. Speaker, as previously noted, the authority does not seek to resolve individual complaints, but will ensure that the financial institutions have the appropriate policies, processes, and internal structures to treat their customers fairly, as well as a robust complaint handling mechanism. The authority will coordinate its efforts with the Department of Consumer Affairs to monitor breaches of conduct across each sector and to deal with non-compliant companies. They will also monitor how institutions are adhering to the market code of conduct or practice. Mr. Speaker, in view of this, the House is advised that the authority has conducted a review of conduct standards set down by the following international standard-setting bodies: the Bank for International Settlements, the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, the International Organization of Securities Commissions, the G20 High-Level Principles on Financial Consumer Protections 2011, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Mr. Speaker, standards establish the actions that could be taken by supervisors to develop an effective conduct framework. Regarding general measures to safeguard the interest of both the consumer and an institution, Principle 1 of the G20 High-Level Principles on Financial Consumer Protection of 2011 provides that financial consumer protection should be an integral part of the legal, regulatory, and statutory framework. Principle 1 also provides that such protection should also reflect the diversity of national circumstances and global market and regulatory developments within the financial sector. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, the House is advised that the authority commenced a consultation process in August of 2020, concluding in April of 2021. The objective of this consultation was to gather views of the public on the authority's long-term conduct agenda. Reference is made to the following consultation packages: the Bermuda Monetary Authority discussion paper entitled The Conduct of Business Regulatory Framework for Bermuda, dated August 2020, and the Bermuda Monetary Authority consultation paper entitled Proposal for a Conduct of Business Regulatory Regime, dated December 2020. Mr. Speaker, the authority's proposed approach to the supervision of conduct of business has been encapsulated by 6 high-level principles, which are as follows. The firm must ensure fair and equitable treatment of its customers. The firm must have continuing regard for the interest of its customers in the conduct of its business. The firm must ensure that communications with customers are fair, clear, and not misleading. The firm must ensure that protection of customers' assets against loss, fraud, and misuse. The firm must handle complaints and errors in a manner that is fair and expedient. And we're dealing with retail customers. The firm must ensure that individuals are aware of the responsibilities within the business relationship and have access to appropriate financial educational resources. Mr. Speaker, the package was targeting a wide range of stakeholders, both the general public and relevant organizations and institutions. A stakeholder response letter was also published by the authority on the authority's website in April of this year to address the queries raised during the consultation process. Mr. Speaker, among the multi-layered results that can be extracted from stakeholder replies, the most prominent areas of action include those related to scope, timing, and retail versus non-retail customers. Below is the summary encompassing the main findings of the consultation. As it relates to the application of the proposal, the authority advised that the details will be incorporated into sector-specific codes of conduct. The authority also advised that the codes will reflect the diversity of Bermuda's financial services market. With respect to timing and implementation, the authority advised that it is intended that codes of conduct for the banking sector will be put in place before year-end. Codes of conduct for the insurance sector will be amended to include the relevant provisions before year-end. A transition period yet to be determined will also be put in place to provide institutions with time to adjust to new requirements. As it relates to regulatory treatment of retail and non-retail customers, the authority advised that the codes are intended to be proportionate to the nature of the customer and that individual implementation will be primarily focused on retail customers. And as it relates to cross-border scope, the authority has advised that the codes are intended to be applied in the same manner as all other provisions of the relevant framework. The authority also accepts that an entity may comply with what they deem to be a higher standard required by a foreign jurisdiction. Speaker, in that context, the key amendments to the Banks and Deposit Companies Act of 1999 are as follows. The authority's statutory powers will be expanded to include protections for customers and the promotion of the fair treatment of financial services customers. The authority's powers to obtain information will be expanded to include a power to obtain information and reports from a licensed institution regarding codes of conduct. It is also proposed to amend the relevant provisions of the BDCA to include a power to obtain information and reports regarding the safeguarding of the interest of clients and potential clients of an institution. Minimum criteria for licensing is set down in the second schedule of the Act. The minimum criteria will be amended by including obligations to comply with codes of conduct. And the authority and the Ministry of Home Affairs will also agree additional changes to the framework to provide for information sharing between the authority and the Department of Consumer Affairs. Mr. Speaker, the House has also advised that the authority carried out a review of relevant frameworks in other places and noted that while some jurisdictions have separate supervisory authorities for prudential and conduct supervision, there are some where the same regulators also have responsibility for both prudential and conduct supervision. Given the scale of the Bermuda financial services market, it is feasible for the authority to assume the conduct of business mandate alongside its prudential responsibilities. Mr. Speaker, the authority will initially incorporate conduct supervision within its supervisory units, as these units already have a strong working relationship with the financial services institutions and understand the business model of each sector. As the conduct supervisory framework matures, the authority aims to establish a dedicated unit devoted to conduct supervision. Mr. Speaker, the authority will soon issue the relevant draft code conduct for consultation, as it is proposed to finalize the codes by year-end 2021. In addition, the authority has already met with financial institutions to discuss these matters. It is also proposed to put in place a suitable transition period to allow banks to come into full compliance. It is also agreed that the authority will proceed with the Code of Conduct proposal in the first instance. Amendment to the consumer affairs regime will be assessed based on the outcomes of technical discussions already underway, together with feedback received during the next phase of the consultation process. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would highlight the importance of these proposed changes to the regulatory framework to ensure that there is even greater focus within this jurisdiction on matters relating to consumer protection in the financial services sector. This is consistent with this government's commitment to a fairer and better Bermuda. In this regard, I wish to express my sincere thanks to the Ministry of Finance, the Authority, the Ministry of Home Affairs, together with the Ministry of Legal Affairs, for their assistance with the development of the framework. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.